Good evening and welcome to the March 10th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for York County. The way the meeting will run tonight is our first item will be the adoption of the meeting minutes. Then after that, we'll go on to old business. Then after any old business, we'll go on to new business, and the new business will kind of run this way. The staff will come up and give their presentation, and the applicant will be next up to give their presentation. We ask that when you come to the podium, you give your name and your address, and please speak into the microphone. Then after the applicant has given their presentation, we'll open it up for a public hearing where we'll call for anyone for or against the application. And once that has run its course, the applicant may come back up and make additional comments. After that point in time, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move into a motion from the board to accept, deny, or defer. At that time, we'll have discussion, and then the board will vote. So, first item is the meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Does anyone have any comments?
No, I didn't see any corrections needed.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Vote, all in favor? Unanimous. Minutes are approved. We have no old business on the docket, so we'll move straight to new business. Case is Z22-4V.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Kirshner with York County Zoning. I'm going to do the presentation on this case. This is for a variance request for a small wireless pole. Oh, does it work? Maybe not. Okay. Oh, I forgot to change the top of the presentation. It's not for a communication tower exactly, it's for a small cell tower. The applicant is Metrolina Greenhouses Incorporated. The property location is 5123 St. James Church Road here in York. It's on over two different parcels, part of the Metrolina farm. The zoning on those parcels is both AGC and RUD. The variance is from a max height limitation of 50 feet for two small wireless poles, which is section 155.568B of the updated code of ordinances with the recode. And here's the zoning map, shows the property, parcel we're talking about. And just go ahead. You clicked it, can you click it? And this is the aerial map, shows the Metrolina farm. And these proposed small cell wireless poles are in kind of the center area. You'll see on the next map where a lot of the greenhouses and warehouses and farming areas are, where old Quarry Road used to be, but as it was put in the packet, Quarry Road was closed. That section of it was closed off, so it's actually part of the farm now and part of the drive. The next slide, please. I made this kind of map to kind of try to show the location of the two proposed poles, kind of along where the old Quarry Road was, and the setbacks from the nearest properties off the farm property, which is about 1,900, 1,800 feet to the nearest properties or buildings that are not owned by Metrolina. The next slide, please. This is a zoom in where the access road is. That's one of the pole locations you can see on the applicant's packet where one of the small cell wireless poles would be. These small cell poles, you most likely see them They're popping up a lot of places, usually in the road right away or pretty close to the road right away. Carowinds Boulevard, Gold Hill Road, between 35 and 50 feet usually, either located on existing pole or kind of matching the existing lighting poles, utility poles. Of course, this one is more just for the Metrolina site, internal to the site, so it's a little bit different than the ones that we usually see coming for permitting. The next slide. And here's an example of what the small cell poles are for. The applicant wants it for their own kind of radio phone network for AT&T inside the facility, inside the farm, to be able to communicate between workers. So it's not for, we usually have communication towers that were for the general public, and they're obviously much taller. But this is a small cell. It's for a localized area, is what these poles are used for. The next slide, please. I took some photos of the site. This is one of the areas that into this parking lot will be one of the areas for the pole. The existing light poles and power poles that are kind of around that area, kind of you can see it over the far view. Those are about 35 to 40 feet high to give like a scale. So this pole, if granted the variance, would be maybe twice the height of those. And like I said, there's two of them, one at this location and then one farther down the road. And this is in the parking lot location. Next slide. This shows going down the road that we're looking at where the other pole would be. And you can see the existing greenhouses and other parts of the farm, that direction, and the existing utility poles. And the next slide's from going the other direction. It's going more towards 161, and you can see more of the parking lot from that direction. Next slide. The variance approval criteria has to meet 4 criteria to be granted a variance. A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to a particular piece of property. Metrolina does have over about 500 acres of the farm area, which obviously is a large area, and they're trying to provide communication for their employees on this. Like I mentioned before, most of our small wireless poles that come in for permitting are more on their public right-of-way or a little bit closer to adjacent properties. Therefore, they have a height limit based on adjacent poles or a height limit of 50 feet. Of course, this is, like I said, pretty far deep into the Metrolina property and farm, so it's a little bit unusual in that way. And it's, like I said, almost 2,000 feet away from neighboring properties. Because we feel this is an unusual situation for small cell, staff believes the proposed variance meets this first criteria. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. There are other farms in the property, but Metrolina is one of the largest farms in that area, which goes back to the applicant's desire to have this communication system internal to their business. Next slide, please. C, because these conditions, the application of this chapter to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The applicant's request to have the small wireless pole installed as part of their business is reasonable. The request would have been approved if it was within the height limitation, which is like 50 feet for small cell wireless. So the request to have the small cell is internal to the Metrolina is not the issue. It's the variance for the height. And speaking with the applicant, working with AT&T, and they can talk to more about this, their options. But where the infrastructure is and where everything is, these are the optimal locations, they think, for the poles, and they need the additional height to cover the entire area to go above that 50 feet. So staff believes that the proposed variance meets this criteria. The authorization of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, or the character of district will not be harmed by the grant of the variance. Again, the distance to adjacent properties is close to 2,000 feet. Most of the neighbors won't be able to see it. Again, most of our small cells are more towards the public, in public parking lots along public right-of-ways. But this is going to be, like I said, internal. Basically, you can see it from the Metrolina properties are being really close to the Metrolina farm property. Again, this small cell wireless is a little bit too, it's too tall to be small cell exactly, but it's not a full-on communication tower. It's kind of in between, and that's when it came in for a permit. It was like, I think you need a variance for that, because it's basically just it is a small cell wireless pole, but it is above that maximum height limitation. And that's why I have to come in for a variance, because it's internal to the site, the increase in height, don't think it's gonna be a detriment. So staff finds the variance criteria is met on this one. Next one. Because staff believes it meets all 4 criteria, staff does recommend approval of this standard to be varied, which is increasing the maximum height of the 2 wireless poles to 76 feet in height, a variance of 26 feet from the code section. Do you have any questions? And the applicant's here to talk about it.
Yeah, I have one question. The county design standard says small wireless facilities and associated poles should be located at least 10 feet from a driveway and must be placed outside of site triangles.
Right.
But their site plan, and I realize there may be an easy explanation for this, but their site plan actually shows that the equipment and the antenna pole to be no more than 8 feet from what I guess you would have to call a driveway. It's written here as access road.
Right. And because that road was closed, Quarry Road, and that section is closed, it's essentially their internal driveway. When we look at that with the separation requirement for driveways, we're looking at that along roadways, meaning that all the other ones we've had before are either in the right-of-way or very close to the road right-of-way. So the pole cannot be right here when you have an intersection to a road, an actual road. And so that's what we look out for when you have that separation requirement, or someone else's or a neighbor's driveway. But looking at this one, we believe it's essentially internal, so it's like it's in their own parking lot.
Okay.
So we don't feel like it meets the same, it has to meet that standard, because if it was still Quarry Road, it would have to be set back and meet that setback, but it's no longer Quarry Road because that section was closed. It now becomes private property.
So you're saying that the way that you interpret that design standard is not necessarily at least 10 feet from a driveway, but 10 feet from a driveway entrance?
Yeah, it would be 10 feet from like an adjacent driveway, or I would say this is more of now with the road closed, the way I looked at it and we talked about it was that is more like an internal driveway aisle, as opposed to a driveway where we look at it where because we have site distance requirements and separation requirements for driveways, but not as much inside the parking lot, because in that case, the one in the parking lot would also be close to the driveway, if you know what I mean. I guess that's where I know what you mean, but at the same time, when I'm looking at it is it where it is going to be too close to a adjacent driveway or the intersection driveway, as opposed to inside a parking lot. You know what I mean? Because that's now private property, it's not a road anymore. And that's the way we were looking at it as far as that design requirement.
Okay.
And we did post signs and sent notices. A couple of neighbors did call about it, but when they knew it wasn't a full-on cell tower, they didn't express any concerns to staff.
So this is almost just out of curiosity, since the old Quarry Road, was it called?
What now?
The road. that was
Quarry Road?
closed-
Yeah, Quarry Road.
Since that road was, if that road had not been closed off, and these are placed, I think where they are now, which is pretty close to where that road used to be, there's a section here that says that a new pole can be 10 feet taller than any other pole that's in the right of way. So if that was still a road and there was a 66-foot tall pole for whatever reason anywhere in that right of way, they could have just put them up by right?
I'm trying to look at the next section. It does have the cap out at the 50 feet. So it's based on the height. It's easier to kind of explain this with existing roads when they go along the right of way. So when they place them along the right of way, and there's existing utility poles or light poles, they can go as high within that limit of those existing poles, but there's that cap of 50 feet
Well,
total
it says 50
for the
feet
small
or.
cell.
Yeah, it does say or, so it's like it almost seems like there's either way. You could either be 50 feet
I always
or
looked
you could
at,
be
we
10
hadn't
feet.
had one over 50 feet, so they've been, the ones that come in, other ones, have come between 35 feet to 50 feet. It's been about the range. Again, those are usually, they have to say, there are wooden telephone poles here, we're gonna do a wooden, you know, a small cell pole, or the antenna's on top of a wooden pole to match what's there, or they have the lighting poles. We asked them if they can co-locate in the lighting poles. If they can't, because Duke Energy or whoever has the lighting, they're not gonna do that, because they have to have it constructed for it. They at least have to match, so if like in Carowinds, they're metal poles, because there's metal. So they have to do that. In this site, of course, it's all internal, so it's, but there are existing utility poles, but there's not a comparable pole that would hold this tall of a small cell, I guess. But I would say 50 feet is the max, and then to be 76 feet, obviously, we need a variance for small cell.
Okay, and then the variance is for 26 feet, because the application says 75, well, would be 25 feet, because he's saying 75 feet in the
Yeah,
application. So
it's-
there was a
it-
foot
Yeah,
discrepancy.
when we got the plans from the actual engineers, it ended up being 76. I want to be clear that the request is for the 26-foot
26
variance.
feet.
The poles that they're proposing, you know, on the two sites.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
Ready.
Applicant, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Neil Mitchell. I'm the Director of Operations at Metrolina Greenhouses. And as Mr. Kirchner sort of alluded to, we are looking to put two private small cell towers on our property. He spoke of the location of them, and they are, in fact, like he said, close to 2,000 feet from the nearest residence, which can't be seen by that residence, you know, due to obstacles, just the lay of the land. Yes, sir.
Did you give your name and address?
I'm so sorry.
do
Yeah.
that first, yeah.
Neil Mitchell. I'm at 2745 Filbert Highway, Clover, South Carolina.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you.
But I've got some copies of the current coverage and proposed coverage that I could pass out to you guys if you'd like to look at it. For everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So on the first page there, you're looking at the darker green area is the current coverage we have with Wi-Fi, where we use our own Wi-Fi on site, just like you would at your house. And then the sort of yellowish lime green area is what we're proposing to do with the new small cell towers. And basically, when you look at the second page shows an outline of our property and the current coverage that we have with the network. And this is, of course, network outside of Wi-Fi when we're trying to use the network. You go to the third page, and that's the improvements that we make with adding the proposed cell towers, you know, if we're granted the variance. And are there any questions about the drawings here?
Does this change cell reception for any of your neighbors?
I'm sorry?
Does it change cell reception for any of your neighbors?
Absolutely not. As when we done the site survey, we you know, we had them come out, and so I wanted to kind of talk about the variance and the tower height. It kind of goes to what you're talking about with also. We had to go above the 50 feet because of the lay of the land, the structures, just the way our property's laid out. It is over 500 acres, so there's a lot to try to get around and get over. But when in doing that, this tower is designed for private use only. So it does not adversely affect other coverage. It just helps our coverage with our push-to-talk radios. If another person outside of the company were to try to, you know, log on to the tower, if you will, or connect to the tower, it would reject them. So it's made for our network only, and if need be, I have a gentleman from AT&T that could speak on that, but this is something that Metrolina Greenhouses is funding in-house for ourselves. And the main reason we're doing it is because it is such a vast area. We have lots of teams. In peak season, there's over 300 people out in the fields working, whether it be production or getting up product for putting on trailers to ship. And we do use these push-to-talk radios. It's very similar to the old school walkie-talkies, but, you know, obviously much more advanced. But in essence, that's how they work. It also will help us boost our Wi-Fi to control our Argus systems. Argus is basically a software system that controls all of our irrigation systems, our fertilizer injection pumps, and things of that nature. So everything's going more automated now, and that helps us communicate with all that throughout the, you know, the property. It also allows us to track the folks on the farm for safety reasons. It allows us to do like an all-call. If there's storms coming up and lightning, we can reach out to everyone, you know, hey, get in, storms coming, things of that nature. So it's you know, it's a big safety thing for us, and we feel like it's very much needed for us to be able to communicate with all the folks on the farm effectively and efficiently. And once again, it's not these two towers are not for public use, and the public cannot connect to that network. And we do have Mr. Kirchner spoke on the you know, telephone poles, power poles, if you will, we have on the farm. You know, those are located all over the farm, and a lot of them are light poles. We use growing lights for what we call light interruption for our mums during mum season, and those poles are actually 60 feet tall. So, I mean, I think they're probably buried 5 feet in the ground, so it makes them 55 feet above the ground. We had to have them real high so we get the light coverage for our plants. So we do have those, you know, spread out over the farm in different areas. And speaking of the pole, I know when you were speaking with Mr. Kirchner about the pole being located near a driveway, again, it is all private property. We worked last year to have Quarry Road closed, a portion of it, and because we own so much land on both sides, and we were able to successfully get that done. So Quarry Road is now just a private drive there. And the access road I think you were speaking of is technically, it's a growing bed. So for us to get flowers to and from these growing beds, we have to use tractors and wagons and such. And in those growing beds, there are little access roads. They're roads to allow us to transverse through those beds, you know, and some of those beds are, you know, 15 acres. I think the one in particular close to where we're putting this power pole is about 6 acres. So when you're trying to get your product to and from a 6 acre site, you know, you have to have those little access roads for the tractors. But there again, you know, of course, Quarry Road's a private drive as well now, and it's only accessible by Metrolina employees. So I don't know if anybody had any questions specifically.
I think so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody to speak in favor of the application? Anybody to speak against? Does anybody have any additional questions, since we do have some other?
I'm good.
Okay. So seeing that, we'll close the public hearing and open it for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Well, just for discussion, I just think there's definitely a need for it. Safety reasons, and just, he talked about the technology for irrigation and to make sure, everything runs well. I think it meets all 4 criteria, and, I think I would approve it.
I'll say that I think the staff's reasoning behind the, whether or not the application meets the 4 conditions is spot on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Seeing none opposed, it passes unanimously. Next case on our docket is Z 22-5V.
It was off. All right, Marion Ray, zoning planner for York County. Tonight, we have case number Z 22-5, and the applicant is Larry Presley.
Hold on a second. We need to get Tony back in here.
Good.
Should I go get him?
I was watching live video, it's like 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. Marion Ray, zoning planner for York County. My case tonight is case number Z 22-5. The applicant is Larry Presley, and the property location is 456 Old Pinckney Road. That is just around the corner down here. Tax map number is 296007. The zoning is RSF 40. As of last week, we updated our zoning code, so the zoning designations are slightly different. It's just a different name, same zoning designation. They're requesting a variance from a new section code here, 155.058-1, as front yard setback. The front yard setback is 25 feet. The house was built 4.5 feet off the edge of the right-of-way. Here we have the zoning map of the property. You can see here it's an RSF 40. It's right across the street from AGC. And you have RMX 10, which is a dense residential. That would be the old RD2 over there. And here you have the location map. You can see it's along Old Pinckney Road. It's not terribly far down Old Pinckney. Only a couple of minutes. It's not down toward the end of it. And I kind of blew up the survey here. This is the sealed foundation survey that was taken. The yellow is the actual setback for the property. The orange is the edge of the right-of-way, and the red is the edge of the pavement. So when the house was sited, it went from the edge of the pavement instead of the edge of the property line. There was a little confusion there. Right-of-way property line. So the property line is actually the center line of the road. It's one of the older school ones. So it was supposed to be measured from the right-of-way. There was confusion. And then go through the finding. Oh, here's the picture of it. This was taken pretty much right as the violation, the posting. You can see the county truck there. And you see Old Pinckney, that's to the west there, we're facing west, and the home there right on the edge of the road. All right, we'll go through the approval criteria. At nearly an acre in size and more than 350 feet in depth, the subject lot has appropriate acreage. to site a home within the designated setbacks for, it's basically a 1,600 square foot home. Therefore, staff finds the proposed variance does not meet this criteria. And B, based on the previous finding, if there's no extraordinary exceptional conditions, staff finds that B, it does not meet criteria. For C, because of these conditions, the application of this chapter to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The proposed site plan for the project showed the structure meeting the required minimum setbacks and was subsequently approved by staff based on showing the appropriate setbacks. So therefore, staff finds the proposed variance into the 25-foot setback does not meet this criteria. And the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of a variance. So the purpose of setbacks is to create a uniform and consistent look for a neighborhood. In addition, the Old Pinckney Road, while designated as a minor road by zoning standards, serves as an access to the city of York for several rural communities. As such, meeting minimum required front setback is a matter of public safety for motorists and personal safety for the usage of the home. Therefore, staff finds the variance does not meet this criteria. So since the proposed variance request does not meet all 4 criteria for an unnecessary hardship, staff has to recommend denial of the requested variance. And I know you will have questions for me. I'm going to go back to the maybe.
So explain what a roughed-in home is.
Hey, Jeff, can you move it back to the plat for me? Thank you. It won't go now. That one.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
No,
What was that?
yeah, can you just, I heard it, but I don't know if
Roughed
everybody,
in home, plumbing, electrical, HVAC.
Okay.
it's all connected and, okay.
Your
so-
rough part of it.
Okay. And I would assume this house is on a slab?
It is on a crawl space.
It's on a crawl space?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So under the variance findings analysis, letter C, when it says the proposed site plan for the project showed the structure meeting the required minimum setback. So there was a plan showing that at the time it was within the setback,
Correct.
but what's physically out there is not lining up with the plan.
No.
Okay.
The permit application showed it from the edge of the right-of-way as appropriate, but the actual measurement in the field was not from the edge of the right-of-way. It's from the edge of the pavement.
It's page 51 in your packet.
Okay, the picture.
So we've had quite a few of these that have severe consequences. And I'll admit, every time I've ever got a building permit, I've made a hand drawing on a copy of the plat about the county, and we moved on from there. But is there does the county have, a standard cautionary language that most people measure this from the pavement. They just think, okay, if I have a 25-foot setback, they measure from the edge of the pavement back 25 feet, and that's never correct.
Right.
So we always end up in these situations, and I know it's the builder and the applicant's responsibility to make sure that they're complying with it, but most people don't understand it, especially people that aren't professional builders.
Right.
So is there any kind of a cautionary, make sure you know where you're measuring from statement that's given to people when they apply for a permit?
Not at this time. We have been in discussion on how to measure from the setback or the right-of-way, or how to just determine what your right-of-way is. So there has been some discussion on the drafting of that information. Unfortunately, with the READ code, some things have taken a back seat, but we are still working on getting a drafted kind of a form that would be part of the application for a home or anything that has a setback, saying this is how you measure it. But again, it has to be, we can't take responsibility for mismeasurements.
Used to be, there was, I believe it was Peggy Hill. She would write it out for you. and make sure you knew. But the story that I've gotten is it's so hard to get a hold of DOT nowadays to figure out what the setback on that road is. We always try to use 33 foot, but that's not always accurate. But most of the time, 33 feet. We always add a little more just to be safe. But I'd second Jeff on that. It would really be beneficial on the permit page where your setbacks are. Bold letters. Make sure you're measuring from even if you don't list out the distance for them, just say make sure you're measuring from the edge of right of way, not edge of pavement.
Right.
And so I think that would be very helpful.
Yes.
And especially here in the last few weeks last few months with the cases that we've had.
Right.
And I forgot to mention, I have gotten 2 phone calls about the variance. One was a question, and the other one was a neighbor who was in favor of the variance.
So if there's ambiguity about how you measure it, but the responsibility falls on the builder and the applicant,
Right.
where is the standard where, okay, I know regardless of the gray area, other than, well, I got an acre, just stick it in the middle of the lot and I know I'm good at that point.
Right.
Because if that's the case, there's always going to be gray areas and they'll end up here. And you have to.
And a large part of our county is agricultural, and getting exact measurements for a home that's on 6 acres can be onerous. So a lot of the times we do operate on an estimate, like 100+ feet. And when you have 1 acre lot sizes, there's a lot of room to move around. It's the smaller lots where we really have to be on top of it. And one thing I can say is we had a couple of fill-in inspectors at the time. Our regular inspector was out sick. And we had a couple of fill-in inspectors. One was new, and they were all working their regular jobs plus filling in for other people. And unfortunately, both of the inspections that were performed by people who normally work in Fort Mill. So setback from a road looked normal to them. That wasn't something that really stuck out. And when our regular inspector came back, he was the one who discovered it on that last inspection, like, hang on, this is wrong. So.
But at the end of the day, the liability is on the builder, not the inspector to keep track of that.
So, excuse me, is York County unique in its or in its, I don't know the right word, in the way the ordinance is written, is how the relationship between the property line right-of-ways and setbacks? Is there anything unique to York County that's?
Not unique to North County, no. It's unique to South Carolina. South Carolina is unusual that our property lines sometimes go to the middle of the road. I've worked in 2 different states. This is my 3rd state, and I've never seen it before. So that does cause some confusion when your property line's the center of the road.
Is this why you don't let them go to the middle of the road anymore?
Yeah, that's why I'm always cutting them off.
Do you know of an instance where a setback is tied to the edge of pavement?
Not unless it's a private road. Public roads wouldn't have that situation, but private roads sometimes do. Or alleys, that kind of thing.
Okay. More questions for staff? Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward, please?
Directly into the mic, it's not very sensitive.
All right.
Hey.
Well, good evening. My name is Larry Presley, and I am here to request a variance for the address at 456 Old Pinckney Road.
Could you state, is that your current address? If not, could you state
My
that?
current address
Yeah.
is 5139 Stockbridge Drive, Mount Holly, North Carolina.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I listened to the presentation, and I am a practical-minded guy. So the York County Planning and Development paperwork that I got reads that the front setback is 25 feet, the back setback is 25 feet, and then on both sides or either side is 10 feet. Being that my client, he lives in the city, and I'm from out of town, I was talking to him at his home, and when I saw these setbacks, I mean, my mindset was, okay, well, this is the way they do it in the city. All right, not really realizing or taking into consideration at the time that Old Pinckney Road was county. As a matter of fact, didn't have any clue because I had to go down and stake out the property, as was stated earlier, and the question was asked. And it was 25 feet from the road. And as I honestly stated in this request for a variance, okay, it was an oversight on my part. But I didn't, we didn't begin construction without consent from the county. I heard the statement before, and I admit to my oversight, being the superintendent of the project, Mr. Gilliam trusted me with. My reprimand is up here standing before you today. Because it was something that, decision that I made, and that it has cost my client this hearing. The one thing that I do ask, and it says there's no impediments on the other properties, and of course it views, my view, it was close to the front of the road, but as the financier of the project, you know, we considered the length of the drive and all of that, and the cost of that. It wasn't a deterrent, it was just a matter of budgeting. So therefore, our request is that we haven't broken any rules that wasn't allowed by the county, including the stop building, stop construction, and as you saw from the pictures, it's already in the rough. As every step of the way, I called, asked for the supervisor for the county, because of the delay in windows and material and things of that nature, we were allowed to continue to construct upon request and upon assurance. So it had the county come out, do an inspection where I set up the stakes around it. They even changed the location that I had suggested that the septic system go. So they came out and did adequate work on the site. And you know, I just ask that you consider to honor our variance, because it was just done, from what it sounds like, an oversight on a lot of our parts. What we did consider is being the closeness of the road and understanding the nature in which the property sits, is that, you know, we're gonna put a barrier up either side of the highway for safety reasons for the consumers of the home, that where anything, let's say a vehicle or something goes off road, that there would be an impediment there before it would strike the structure not attached to the foundation of the home. And with that request being made, I guess I asked if you have any questions for me. I'll try to answer them if I can.
I think you have a number of them.
I have a question. I'm kind of confused. I'm a builder myself, and you're talking about staking out the property and having the county came out to look at it. I'm not familiar with that, any of that process. So what exactly was that? And you said they actually moved the septic system?
Yes, I had the drawings that I submitted to them.
Yes, sir.
They moved the septic system from the right back corner to the left back corner of the property. So that
somebody at the county did that, or DHEC?
Yeah, yes. The county sent it back to us that way. I thought that maybe y'all had a copy of this. Would you like to take a look at it?
Yes, sir.
I submitted it. The septic system on this side.
You from DHEC, not the county. Okay, that's where the confusion, because, okay, two different organizations here. Hey, can I have that bottom? That was mine. Thank you.
All right.
So you staked the house out for
I staked
DHEC.
the house out,
and,
right.
And when they came to do the perk test,
Yes, and we were called a rough inspection, and that's when I guess the experienced inspector come out and said that it was construction was to be stopped immediately because it was too close to the road. On that very day, I called the office and I talked to Miss Garthy, and she said, "Mr. Presley, looked like you staked it out 25 feet from the road, from the pavement." I said, "Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what I did." So she said, "Well, you're gonna have to request a variance."
yes, sir.
And it was at that point that we got that information.
And you had mentioned earlier that if this board was to approve this variance, you guys would be willing to put some sort of guardrail or something in front of this house?
Yes.
What did you
And-
guys have in mind?
Yeah.
Well, I had considered a brick flower bed, say like not attached to the foundation. That would be an impediment to, I'm just thinking of a car veering off the road and protecting the home.
So you maybe like almost like a brick retaining wall?
Yes, exactly. If that would be acceptable.
I don't know if that would be permitted. You'd have to build it in the
I don't
right
know
of
that
way.
either. I'm just trying to.
You'd have to build in the right of way, I believe.
Okay, so question, because maybe I'm missing something here. So was the placement of the septic tank what pushed the house further to the, or, because you got an acre here. And
Yeah.
even just not being a builder, I got a whole acre and I'm looking at a road where people can probably come through there at a good rate of speed. I'm thinking even just from the noise and resale purpose, if they ever want to sell it. Why not be more on the side of caution and say, you got a whole acre. Why not just push the house back where we know there's not going to be any issue unless something behind us prevented us from doing that? So what was the rationale behind putting the house that close?
Again, I was looking at the 25 feet setback, and like I said, I'm just practical minded. And I talked to the owner about it, and that was his decision. That was our decision that we would build it to 25 feet from the road. Meaning that if that was the standard, which I understood it to be reading the paper, 25 feet setback from the road front. Because when you take the 25 feet from the back of the property line, then I'm thinking 25 feet from the front as well. That was my logic. But yeah, I agree, err on the side of caution. But being aware of this situation after we had requested the rough, then I understand the ruling for the setback from the right of way instead of the road edge.
Mr. Presley, is the septic system already installed?
It's not.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have a question, just mainly out of curiosity. If this board was to deny your variance, what is your plan? How many square feet is this house? Let me ask you that first.
1,600 square.
1,600. So half the house pretty much in the setback.
Yeah.
So what would be your plan if we were to deny your variance?
Well, that's above my pay grade. I just have to sit down and talk to the owner about how he wants to go forward.
Right. I mean, would you think it would be moving the house or tearing the house down and starting over? Or?
I mean, he's here.
I understand.
So a couple questions. There are there are 4 conditions that each board member has to find that the application meets those 4 conditions before we can rightfully vote to approve it. It's the same on every variance. You probably saw the conditions on the first application, and they're also on yours. But on your application, those 4 questions are stated, and in your application, you answered the first 3, no. So it makes it difficult for me to believe that those conditions exist when you answer that question no yourself. So the first question, is there extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to a particular piece of property? And the second, the conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. And the third is, because of these conditions, the application of this chapter of a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict utilization of the property. And all of those, you answered no.
Yeah, well, my understanding of the question was there any reason other than my oversight that we put it there? And there was no adjustment needed from either, in other words, we could have put it to be in compliance. I mean, from the various requests that we're asking for. There was nothing that would have impeded the house to go there, except for my lack of being thorough about the right-of-way versus the edge of the road. And so I was confident or comfortable with that decision when we were approved to construct, with the measurements being staked out, not from the right-of-way, but being staked out from the edge of the road. So they got approval to construct.
How did you come to,
I think what Mr. Presley's referring to on the stakes, so when you apply for a DHEC perk test, and Mr. Presley, excuse me, I'm gonna
Thank
kind of
you.
enlighten up on this a
Thank
little
you.
bit. When you apply for a DHEC perk test, DHEC requires you to stake off, to mark the 4 corners of the home, so that when they come out, they know where the home's going to be. Now, Mr. Presley, you understand that has nothing to do with the county. That is for DHEC purposes only.
I do now.
Yes, sir. Okay. So the county, all they want to see is this form where you drew on this and wrote a 25-foot, and I'm guessing everyone, well, on here, you have it drawn from the right-of-way, not the edge of the road. Even though that this drawing is very confusing, as it looks like a road with a dotted line down the middle, and you drew it off the side of it. So, I mean, I could totally understand where you're getting this from. But the point I was trying to make is that the DHEC is a different entity from the county.
I just have a quick question, kind of off a little bit of the subject that we've been on, is, do you know the speed limit of Old Pickney Road? What is the speed limit? Is it 45, 55? Are you aware?
55, I believe.
55, and is it a pretty well, they did mention in our packet that it kind of is a connective road to York, to some of the rural neighborhoods. Is it and maybe this is a question for the owner, is it a pretty well-traveled road? I mean, is it traffic-wise?
I mean, I guess I've never seen any heavy traffic
Okay,
for the time that we were constructing.
okay. I guess my concern is, long-term, as York County becomes more and more built up, if they ever want to widen the road or put shoulders on, or, if it is a connective road, where we are long-term. If we leave the house or we approve the variance and the house stands as is.
The only question I had was, how did you come to the understanding that that you would measure from the edge of road? What was
That
it?
I should measure from the edge of the road? Because from, I guess what would be the case now, the ambiguity of this setback letter, there is no real stipulation as to from where. Again, on an acre of land, you're looking at, you gotta be 25 feet from the back of the property. Okay, so I just applied the same to the front of the property because it did not clearly state right of way. Even though, out there on the highway, it looked real close to the road,
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you.
I guess it.
Yeah, that's it. Is there anyone to speak in favor of the application? Anyone to speak against the application? Is there anyone to speak for the application? In favor of the application? Yeah, come on up.
Good evening. My name's Warren Adams. I live at 173 West, 109 West Jefferson Street, York, South Carolina.
Okay.
I'm actually the owner of the property that he's constructing. Only thing I can say, it just was totally just a mishap, and I know sometimes there are consequences that goes with that. Only thing I can do is ask the board, ask you guys to, if you could be lenient with us and, I could sit here and say, well, we did this because of what we interpreted from the county, and I could say this and go back and forth with you guys, but, where would we be with that? I mean, I do feel like we was allowed to go so far before we were stopped. I mean, it looked like, it would have came into play early. I mean, real early, and it should have been stopped then. And someone asked, what will I do? I don't know what I'll do. I mean, if the county, if you don't allow the variance, and I'm not getting it to the hardship thing, because I did read the rules and regulations. I mean, but the only thing I asked the county for is just a little sympathy, and that's all. I mean, I appreciate y'all's time, and thank you for hearing our argument, and, just thank you for it, So that's it. Are there any questions?
Yes, sir. The room closest to the road, is that a dining room? Living room? There's a,
Okay,
that might have been a question from,
That kind of little frontage on it.
yes, sir.
That's actually a bedroom.
That's a bedroom.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of the application?
Yeah, also, if you may, Mr. Gilliam was pointing out to me that there is also a ditch.
If you could, so we can get on the microphone. Thank you.
That there is a ditch, prior to, as an impediment, for a further impediment.
So you're saying that ditch helped make your
No,
decision?
I'm just saying what my boss told, you know what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is an impediment, and I know safety is everybody's concern here. That is why I mentioned it.
So there's a ditch that push the house forward versus pushing it back
Well,
further in the setback? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying if a vehicle ran off the road, it would.
Oh, the ditch is in the front. So what you're saying? Okay, okay.
Okay, anyone to speak against the application? Seeing none, the public portion is closed, and I open it up for a motion.
Make a motion to deny.
I will second.
Okay. We have a motion to deny, and we have a second.
I'll start here. I feel terrible for these guys. But at the same time, I'm just looking at this as a safety aspect. I don't know if Mr. Adams has children. The next owner of this home may have children, but all I can think about is a child being asleep in this front room and God forbid something happened. I mean, that is awfully close to the road. I travel this way every day on the way home, and I saw them digging footers, and I said, man, that's close. And I wondered the same thing, why there was no stop. I told myself that day, I said, I'll see a variance on this before long. And sure enough, I came by one day and there was a variance sign out there. I do feel bad that it was not caught until rough end, but they tell us all the time it's our responsibility as a builder to know these rules and to look out for them. Because if we relied on the county has enough going on, enough problems to worry about. They don't have time to check over our shoulder all the time too.
What's an open floor inspection?
Open floor inspection. So the first inspection you have is a footing inspection, and then you pour your concrete footers, and then you build your brick walls or your block walls for your crawl space, and then you frame your floor with wood, your lumber, and then you call for an open floor inspection. So they basically just want to see that your floor system is framed correctly before you put your sheeting over it, because after you sheet it, somebody's got to crawl up under it to look at it. So they want to see that open floor inspection.
Just out of curiosity, just asking about that process. So when they come out and do that inspection, does that person care anything about the edge of the property and the property line?
Yeah. So we I joke with every building inspector I see on my job, because not only do they have to be building inspectors and keep up with all the codes, they have to be part zoning administration too, because they have to know all those rules. And most of them, especially this area, it is different. I was going to ask that, and she explained it as to why was this not caught. But if this inspector was from Fort Mill, I mean, there's different, you go right through Baxter and look at all the houses, how close they are to the road. So if you're used to looking at that all the time, this looks pretty good. But that's not the way it works here. And so, but I have often, back to what we talked about earlier on the permits, I think that definitely should have some sort of writing on those permits that says, this is a 25-foot setback from the right of way, not from, edge of road, because they never would admit it. But that case we saw a couple months ago, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what they did, was pull off the edge of the road. And that's how those houses get built so close. But like I said, I feel terrible. I would hate to have to move this thing and shake this in or tear it off and put it on the back, whatever they come up with to remedy the situation. But we're talking about, I think this right here says 44 by 48. I'm not sure which one's which, but still, that's half the house in the setback,
Right.
And I don't know if you guys pay attention to it or not, but a couple of years ago there was a problem. Was it Neely's Store Road they tried to widen? Neely's Store or Neely's Creek? One of the Neely's. I think it was Neely's Store. They couldn't widen it because all those houses are built so close to the road. And so they ended up changing the road frontage, which it really needed a setback change, not a road frontage change. Personal opinion. But that was the issue there. Is I think that road wanted to be widened and it couldn't, because there were so many houses built so close to it. And so, you know, I being a resident of Sharon, I hope that Old Pinckney never gets widened. There's never a need for it, but if there is, that's not going to happen with this sitting right here. So that is the reason for my decision.
Well,
I'll just say the same thing, say on every one of them. It gets much more difficult when there's a structure built,
Right.
but every one of the requirements that we have to look at refers to the property, as in the land. And if this came and there wasn't a structure there, I don't think there was any way we would approve it.
Right.
So makes it much more difficult, but really the decision is the same.
And again, I'm looking from the safety issue, which is why I asked about the speed limit and everything. I mean, if you got a car flying down here at 65 miles per hour, runs off the road and, you know, plows into the house and somebody's, you know, sleeping in that front bedroom, you know, if we could have prevented it, I'd feel a lot better knowing that we, you know.
and just from my perspective, the property itself, there were no restrictions. There was nothing that, even in the argument, we pushed it here because of a septic tank, a ditch, ravine in the back. You had a whole acre to play with. And to push it that close, I mean, regardless of what the ambiguity was, I just think if you are the owner and the builder, and I'm building using your money, I'm just gonna say, let's be safe than sorry. Whether he wants it in the middle or not, that's his personal preference. We're not here to mandate that. But being that close to the road, they had no reason they had to be that close. So, and even in his application, when I read it, it said no, no, no. So it was being brutally honest on their part.
Yeah,
But you are,
they were
you know, the
honest. We do
catch-22.
appreciate that.
You're being brutally honest, but you are by default, in essence, making the case to deny. So,
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, but we have to abide by the criteria and doesn't meet any of them.
I'm in the same boat. In fact, I want to come help you move it, but I don't see that we have an avenue to approve this. My vote. Any discussion? Yep. Okay, so, let's see, what's the, so the motion is to deny.
there was a second.
We have a second, so all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. It's unanimous.
Sorry, guys.
Thank you. We don't have a need for an executive session?
Unless you'd just like to go into one.
Not really, but it's on the list. It's on my list.
It's gonna be
I'm
every
a rule
month.
follower. All right, so
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
all those in favor?